Hello and welcome to this little video where today I'm going to be having a read of a short story called, quick check, Smoking is Bad for Your Health, which is from this chap, Lead or Mortal Flesh, which is an anthology I published a few years back now. This mixture of like quirky horror, urban fantasy. I think there's about 10 short stories in that one. It's on my website, aschambers.co.uk. But please give me a quick like, give me a quick subscribe, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And straight on to the story. Abigail Smart looked at the time on her eco-friendly, self-winding wristwatch with a mixture of agitation and annoyance. "Oh, this really is quite preposterous," the middle-aged woman grumbled to her partner, Jeremy Whittaker, who stood next to her, rocking back and forth in his cruelty-free walking boots. "All I want is a small packet of Golden Virginia, and they can't manage to get the kiosk open on time." Whittaker ran his smooth office desk fingers through his bushy yet immaculately groomed protest beard. "Well, it is Sunday, darling. Perhaps they're not quite up to speed yet." Up to speed? Up to speed? Smart shook her head so violently that a fair trade Guatemalan earrings bounced angrily from side to side. "The wretched supermarket's been open an hour for browsing, for pity's sake. They're obviously trying to squeeze as much life out of their underpaid workforce as possible. That's the real reason." She was about to launch into a pre-prepared lecture on modern slave labour when a young brown-haired woman briskly approached the kiosk and let herself in behind the counter. The shop assistant was about to apologise for her tardiness when there was a commotion nearby. All eyes in the lengthening line of customers for the cigarette kiosk turned to watch an elderly woman in a dilapidated electric wheelchair skid her creaking vehicle into the front of the queue. She reached into a flapping handbag and slapped a screwed-up £10 note on the counter. "When-E-E-N-A!" The young shop assistant's mouth mimicked the disabled woman's handbag as, in confusion, it too flapped open. "When-E-E-N-A!" the elderly woman insisted, spittle dribbling down her chin. "I don't believe it," Smart hissed under her breath to her partner. To the woman who had pushed in front of her, she said, "Excuse me, but we were here first." The old woman's rheumy grey eyes gave Smart a mere flicker of acknowledgement before she returned to waving the money at the befuddled shop assistant. "Jeremy, did you just ignore me? Jeremy?" Whittaker bent forwards between a melange of tatty bags for life that were hung from the wheelchair and tapped the old woman on her heavily padded coat. "I'm sorry, but we were here first." The woman sighed. "Off!" She threw over her shoulder before repeating her demand to the shop assistant, whilst pointing frantically at the metal shutters that concealed the cigarettes. As the assistant opened the shutters for the woman to demonstrate which particular brand she was after, Whittaker stood stunned. "Did she just tell me to? There must be a carer somewhere." Smart was craning her neck around to see if she could spot someone. Probably some late teenage girl mooning over the glossy mags. Let's face it, she can't be out on her own. The smell alone suggests she's not able to look after herself. Her nose wrinkled and she whispered, "She pongs of wee, for pity's sake." "Ow!" The perfectly attired woman jumped back as the electric wheelchair lurched back and ran over her foot before scooting away and out of the superstore, almost taking a display of lemons out as it did so. Finally, she marched forwards before anyone else could steal her place in the queue, only to encounter a crumpled Hessian bag on the floor in front of the counter. "Looks like she dropped her shopping," the woman in the kiosk commented. Smart gave a deep sigh and bent down to see what was lurking in the discarded carrier. She peeled back a filthy-looking rag. "What on earth?" Then suddenly, there's a bright flash of light. Matty Phillips's ample stomach rumbled noisily from beneath his Millennium Falcon t-shirt. He just wanted to pay for the crisps he'd picked up, grab some Rizzlers, and get out. He had to meet his guy in about 15 minutes, and at this rate, he was going to be somewhat tardy. That was bad. The cigarette kiosk was late opening up, and there was a couple in front of him already. The bloke was some sort of hipster dude, judging by the beard that looked like it belonged to a guy from Lush. And the woman was so straight that you could use her as a guide for hanging wallpaper, but she quite obviously wanted to appear hip to please the guy. Perhaps he had massive, Phillips chuckled to himself. His mirth evaporated when an old woman zoomed her electric wheelchair into the front of the queue. She was funny looking, all grey and wrinkly, under a huge overcoat and loaded down with shopping bags. Her head seemed to poke from the top of her coat without the aid of a neck. "Winnie-E-N-A!" the woman squealed at the shop assistant who had just arrived at the kiosk. "Whoa, she's a lady jabber," Phillips chuckled. "Go on, say Hanmabogi." She didn't. Instead, she repeated, "Winnie-E-N-A!" And the woman in the kiosk looked mightily confused. Phillips's nerves started to get the better of him, and his stomach rumbled once more. This was going to take forever. Guy was going to be so pissed off. He'd probably want more for the dope. The ginger-haired stoner rummaged around in the pockets of his barely washed jeans and found all that he had in his possession. A snotty hanky, various bits of fluff, a stormtrooper minifigure, and enough cash for his usual amount of weekend fun. He was going to have to improvise. Perhaps if he grabbed something from the tech department of the shop on his way out. That would pacify his dealer. He looked up and saw the crazy granny snack up a golden box of 20 Benson and Edges before shooting off quicker than Han Solo flying the Kessel Run. Awesome, he smiled. All he had to do now was settle up here, grab something nice and shiny, then head off. Then suddenly there's a bright flash of light. "Will you shut up?" Petunia Smith's son was quite simply doing her head in. "I want a Freddo frog! I want a Freddo frog! I want a Freddo frog!" That's all it had been for what had seemed like the last hour, but in reality had been no more than 60 seconds. "I want a Freddo frog!" Snot would be running down his face now. It always did when he started to whinge. She couldn't bear to look at him. It made her feel sick. "I told you, I don't have any." He continued on with his whining litany as Petunia looked forcefully towards the back of some fat, ginger-haired man with body odour issues. All she wanted was to grab her fags and get out of here. She smoked the last one on the way down, and now she was gasping for another. To take her mind off her weight, she flicked on her phone and scrolled down on messages. "Can't wait to see you. I want to rip your knickers off. I want to eat you up." Oh, God, that sounded good. She shivered at the thought of strong hands undressing her and a firm mouth tasting her. "I want a Freddo frog." "For the last time! You've got to be kidding!" Some old bag lady just barged her wheelchair to the front of the queue as the kiosk had opened. "Will you stop that?" Her son was yanking frantically on her hand as his lower lip stuck out in a pout. "Quit it!" Petunia pulled back, causing the youngster to trip over his own feet and collide with the man who stood behind them, the final member of the queue. "Now see what you've done," she yelled at her son, who was now starting to build up to one of his signature siren wails. This was too much. She should have left him at home with his waste of space dad who sat in his underwear and scratched his balls whilst watching footy. She wanted to get away to the sender of the text messages. She did not want to be stuck in a bloody queue waiting for her cigs while some retard got there first. Petunia looked up at the man behind them, the one whom a brat had clouted and started. He was dressed in an immaculate grey suit and was clean-shaven with neatly barbered hair. He would have been sexy as hell if he hadn't been looking at her as son in a weird way. Reflexively, she pulled her child close and his wailing stopped immediately. The man looked away from them, and she followed his eyes as they tracked the bag lady hurrying out of the store, almost taking a display of lemons with her. His eyes darted to a tatty shopping bag that she had left behind, and he half smiled. Petunia Smith felt the deepest fear that she had ever known. Then suddenly, there's a bright flash of light. He waited at the back of the queue. There were 5 people in front of him, a middle-class couple of seemingly bleeding-heart liberals who were really as bigoted as Hitler's and Goebbels' love child, an overweight pot addict who was wondering if he had enough money to pay his dealer for his next fix, and a self-obsessed woman who was not only cheating on her down-at-heel, out-of-work husband, but was also quickly regretting bringing her controlling child out when she really wanted to go and see her lover. None of them were a threat to him. He shifted slightly and felt the heavy weight press into his left side under his precisely cut jacket. Soon, he would have purchased his pack of Morleys, be back in his car, and driving out of this backwater town. He knew that he was risking a lot just for a packet of cigarettes. Only one of the store's video cameras could pick him up. But he had driven for 10 hours overnight and needed that rich roasted flavour. It was the only joy that he had left in his life these days. The bratty child was really playing his mother up. It kept crying over and over for a Freddo Frog chocolate bar. Did they still make those? All his mother was concerned about were the lewd text messages that her lover kept sending her this morning. He could make life far less complicated for her. One shot, and the child would be quiet. Between the eyes, close range. No chance of missing. Winnie and A! The man's eyes followed the commotion at the front of the queue. Winnie and A! An old wheelchair-bound woman was harassing the young shop assistant for 20 Benson and Hedges, but, being rather inarticulate, was struggling to get her request across. Just another day in the life of the same old, same old. Or was it? The wheelchair was laden down with 5 battered Hessian bags, 4 hanging to its back, the 5th in the woman's ample lap. The shop had only just opened, yet each bag seemed to be full to overflowing, and dirty scraps of fabric covered whatever resided in the bottom of each bag. Clearly she had not just been shopping. Also, the bags were plastered with the logos of 5 different supermarkets. The one in the lap displayed the logo that adorned the wall above the kiosk that held his beloved Morley's. The others were branded with what the man guessed to be the other local shops. As the woman leaned forward to point out her desired choice in cancer sticks, she took the bag from her lap and placed it at the foot of the counter. The hairs on the man's neck jumped up, electrified. Years of self-preservation screamed to him as to what was in the bag. Then the boy of the cheating wife slapped him in the groin and his attention was distracted. It was so tempting. There was the boy, the gun was in his holster, seconds away from his hand. Not a good idea. Not in public. But it would sate the ravenous boredom. As the woman followed her maternal instincts for once and pulled the boy close for futile protection, the man heard the clatter of produce as the wheelchair shopper darted out of the shop. The bag had been left behind. The middle-class fraud woman bent to look inside. The man smiled as he accepted that he would not be needing his cigarettes after all. Then suddenly, there was a bright flash of light. Maggie pulled her wheelchair to a screeching halt. The lemons had been a close call, but she had steered around the display quite deftly. Now, outside in the car park, she fished out her phone, the one that had the oversized buttons suitable for her trembling fingers, and punched the first of 5 speed dials that she programmed that morning. It was great satisfaction that she watched the bright flash of light, heard the cracking explosion as the glass doors of the superstore burst outwards. Giving a small grunt of satisfaction, she pocketed the phone, pulled the second bag down into her lap, and set off into town. She had a busy morning in front of her. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, there's more details over at my website, aschambers.co.uk. Again, please give me a quick like, quick subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye now.